Welcome back, dear friends, to the Crimson Academy's course on the Advent of Divine Justice. Dear friends, this is the course exploring the Advent of Divine Justice. And in this section, dear friends, we are on part 7. We are covering in this section paragraphs 17 through 18. And the topics that will be covered are building a framework for nascent institutions, construction of the Baha'i house of worship, securing the allegiance of royalty, establishment of Baha'i schools, and other major achievements. So, dear friends, let us get into reading these paragraphs. Paragraph 17. What other community, it can confidently be asked, has been instrumental in fixing the pattern and in imparting the original impulse to those administrative institutions that constitute the vanguard of the world order of Baha'u'llah? What other community has been capable of demonstrating with such consistency the resourcefulness, the discipline, the iron determination, the zeal and perseverance, the devotion and fidelity so indispensable to the erection and the continued extension of the framework within which those nascent institutions can alone multiply and mature? What other community has proved itself to be fired by so noble a vision or willing to rise to such heights of self-sacrifice or ready to achieve so great a measure of solidarity as to be able to raise in so short a time and in the course of such crucial years an edifice that can well deserve to be regarded as the greatest contribution ever made by the West to the cause of Baha'u'llah? What other community can justifiably lay claim to have succeeded through the unsupported efforts of one of its humble members in securing the spontaneous allegiance of royalty to its cause, and in winning such marvelous and written testimonies to its truth? What other community has shown the foresight, the organizing ability, the enthusiastic eagerness that have been responsible for the establishment and multiplication throughout its territory of those initial schools which, as time goes by, will, on the one hand, evolve into powerful centers of Baha'i learning, and on the other, provide a fertile recruiting ground for the enrichment and consolidation of its teaching force? What other community has produced pioneers combining to such a degree the essential qualities of audacity, of consecration, of tenacity, of self-renunciation, and unstinted devotion that have prompted them to abandon their homes and forsake their all and scatter over the surface of the globe and hoist the uttermost corners the triumphant banner of Baha'u'llah? Who else but the members of this community have won the eternal distinction of being the first to raise the call of Ya Baha'u'llah Pa in such highly important and widely scattered centers and territories as the hearts of both the British and French empires, Germany, the Far East, the Balkan states, the Scandinavian countries, Latin America, the islands of the Pacific, South Africa, Australia and New Zealand, and now more recently, the Baltic states? Who else but those same pioneers have shown themselves ready to undertake the labor, to exercise the patience, and to provide the funds required for the translation and publication in no less than 40 languages of their sacred literature, the dissemination of which is an essential prerequisite to any effectively organized campaign of teaching? What other community can lay claim to have had a decisive share in the worldwide efforts that have been exerted for the safeguarding and the extension of the immediate surroundings of its holy shrines, as well as for the preliminary acquisition of the future sites of its international institutions at its world center? What other community can to its eternal credit claim to have been the first to frame its national and local constitutions, thereby laying down the fundamental lines of the twin charters designed to regulate the activities, define the functions, and safeguard the rights of its institutions? The beloved Guardian highlights the matchless record of the North American Baha'i community in paragraph 17. The beloved Guardian Shaykh Effendi spells out some of the major achievements of the North American Baha'i community over the previous 20 years through a series of 11 rhetorical questions. He reiterates in paragraph 18 his conviction that a community capable of showing forth such deeds, of evincing such a spirit of rising to such heights, already has the potential to be eventually the chief creator and champion of the world order of Baha'u'llah. And this is the close of paragraph 17. What other community can boast of having simultaneously acquired and legally secured the basis of its national endowments, thus paving the way for a similar action on the part of its local communities? What other community has achieved the supreme distinction of having obtained, long before any of its sister communities had envisaged such a possibility, the necessary documents assuring the recognition by both the federal and state authorities of its spiritual assemblies and national endowments? And finally, what other community has had the privilege and been granted the means to succor the needy, to plead the cause of the downtrodden, and to intervene so energetically for the safeguarding of Baha'i edifices and institutions in countries such as Persia, Egypt, Iraq, Russia, and Germany, where at various times its fellow believers have had to suffer the rigors of both religious and racial persecution? Such a matchless and brilliant record of service, extending over a period of well nigh 20 years, and so closely interwoven with the interests and fortunes of such a large section of the worldwide Baha'i community, deserves to rank as a memorable charter in the history of the formative period of the faith of Baha'u'llah. Reinforced and enriched as it is by the memory of the American believers' earlier achievements, such a record is in itself convincing testimony to their ability to befittingly shoulder the responsibilities which any task may impose upon them in the future. To overrate the significance of these manifold services would be well nigh impossible. To apprise correctly their value and dilate on their merits and immediate consequences is a task which only a future Baha'i historian can properly discharge. I can only for the present place on record my profound conviction that a community capable of showing forth such deeds, of evincing such a spirit, of rising to such heights, cannot but already possessed of such potentialities as will it enable it to vindicate in the fullness of time its right to be acclaimed as the chief creator and champion of the world order of Baha'u'llah. Very good, dear friends. So let us get into some major key points from paragraphs 17 and 18. The beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi praises the resourcefulness, the discipline, the iron determination, the zeal and perseverance, the devotion and fidelity of the North American Baha'i community, so essential for building and extending the framework of the Baha'i administrative order. The beloved guardian also highlights the crucial role of that community in fixing the pattern and imparting the original impulse to the institutions leading the world order of Baha'u'llah. And the framework of the Baha'i administrative order are the institutions that are ordained by Baha'u'llah in his writings and further expanded by His Holiness Abdul Baha in his will and testament. The birth and the primary stages in the erection of the framework of the administrative order of the faith signaled the first epoch of the formative age. In 1902, the governing board of the Baha'is of Chicago, known as the House of Spirituality, asked His Holiness Abdul Baha for permission to build a house of worship in Chicago. The royalty referred to by the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi is Queen Marie of Romania, and one of its humble members is a reference to Martha Root. A major achievement of the early North American Baha'i community was the development of Baha'i schools throughout the continent. So let's get into studying these paragraphs. In paragraph 17, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi highlights the major contribution of the American Baha'i community in the development of the Baha'i administrative order through two rhetorical questions. In these questions, he initially praises the resourcefulness, the discipline, the iron determination, the zeal and perseverance, the devotion and fidelity of the North American Baha'i community, so essential for building and extending the framework supporting the multiplication and the maturation of the Baha'i institutions. Shoghi Effendi then highlights the crucial role of that community in fixing the pattern and imparting the original impulse to the institutions leading to the world order of Baha'u'llah. Here, the Baha'i administrative order. The framework of the Baha'i administrative order is the institutions ordained by His Holiness Baha'u'llah in his writings, and further expanded by Abdul Baha in his will and testament. They consist of the local, intermediary, and universal houses of justice. His Holiness Baha'u'llah has ordained the establishment of the elected councils of his future administrative order and referred to them as houses of justice. The context that he is referring to two different entities, the Universal House of Justice and the local houses of justice. In the Kitab Ahdas, His Holiness Baha'u'llah ordains the establishment of the local houses of justice. The Lord hath ordained that in every city a house of justice be established, wherein shall gather counselors to the number of Baha. And should it exceed this number, it doth not matter. The word Baha in this statement has a numerical value of 9, based on the Abjad numbering system. The local house of justice are currently called local spiritual assemblies. Subsequent to the provisions revealed in the Kitab Ahdas, the Most Holy Book, revealed supplementary passages in a number of other tablets. In the tablet of Ishraqat, His Holiness Baha'u'llah states, "This passage now written by the pen of glory is accounted as part of the Most Holy Book. The men of God's house of justice have been charged with the affairs of the people. They, in truth, are the trustees of God among his servants, and the daysprings of authority in his countries." This is a reference to the Universal House of Justice. His Holiness Abdul Baha provides a more explicit explanation of the houses of justice in his will and testament. In addition, he introduces the secondary houses of justice and explicitly states, in all countries, a secondary house of justice must be instituted. This institution is currently called the National Spiritual Assembly. The birth and the primary stages in the erection of the framework of the administrative order of the faith signaled the first epoch of the formative age, starting with the ministry of the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi, and completed in 1944 to 46, the closing of the first century after the declaration of the Blessed Bab. The crowning institution of the framework, the Universal House of Justice, was elected in 1963, ending the second epoch of the formative age. The development of the Baha'i institutions in the United States started as early as 1899, when a council board of 7 officers administrating the North American continent was established in the city of Kenosha. And here, dear friends, we see the picture of the first 18 believers in Kenosha posing for this photograph in 1897. In 1900, His Holiness Abdul Baha instructed a number of Baha'i teachers, Haji Abdul Karim Tehrani, Haji Mirza Hassan Khorasani, Mirza Asadullah, and Mirza Abul Fazl, to travel to the United States to restore confidence of the community undermined by the defection of Ibrahim Khairullah. The consolidation work carried out by these travel teachers proved very effective. In a very short time, they succeeded in dispelling the doubts implanted in the hearts of the Baha'is by Khairullah, deepening their understanding of the fundamental verities of the faith, and giving an impulse to the formation of the nucleus of the Baha'i institutions. And this is a beautiful picture, dear friends. You can see early Baha'is of New York City, 1900, with a Persian travel teacher. You can see standing left to right is Anton Haddad, Elizabeth Dodge, Mr. Rafi, the Persian interpreter, Arthur Dodge, and Edward Getzinger. And sitting left to right You can see Thornton Chase sitting right there, first American believer. And Abdul Karim Tehrani, he's the travel teacher sent by His Holiness Abdul Baha. And to his right is Lua Getzinger. And here, dear friends, is another beautiful picture. This is a picture in 1907. This is the first Baha'i in the West visits the Baha'is in the East. And we see a picture of Thornton Chase, seated second from the right, and the first Baha'i in the West meets Baha'is in the East from Cairo, Egypt. And we can see Mirza Abu Fazail seated to the right of Thornton Chase and Haji Niyaz seated to his left. Consultative bodies were elected in Chicago, New York, and northern New Jersey between 1900 and 1904. The Baha'i Publishing Society was established in Chicago in 1902, and the Baha'i Bulletin was initiated in New York to disseminate the teachings of the faith. Another periodical, Baha'i News, appeared in Chicago on the 21st of March, 1910, and a year later was renamed the Star of the West. This period also witnessed the emergence of many American travel teachers who traveled in the United States, as well as Europe, the Far East, and the islands of the Pacific. And here is a picture of the Board Council of the Baha'i Assembly of New York City, 1900. And you can see seated left to right, Clement Wilson, Howard McNutt, Arthur P. Dodge, Charles E. Sprague, and standing left to right, Anton Haddad, he was an honorary member, Frank E. Osborne, Hooper Harris, William H. Hoare, Andrew Hutchinson, and Edwin A. Putnam. So this is the first Board of Counsel of the Baha'i Assembly of New York City, 1900. The major works of His Holiness Baha'u'llah and His Holiness Abdul Baha, and various articles written by Eastern Baha'i scholars were translated, published, and disseminated between 1904 and 1908. Further consultative bodies were formed in Washington, Boston, and Spokane. During 1909 to 1911, various national initiatives emerged: the formation of the Baha'i Temple Unity, the publication of Star of the West, and the commencement of the construction of the Baha'i Temple in Chicago. And here, dear friends, is a picture in 1910 of an early Baha'i convention in America. And this is a Baha'i convention in the Masonic Temple, Chicago, 1910. And here, Mr. Hall is presiding. And here, dear friends, is a picture of the Baha'i Temple Unity Convention, Chicago, Illinois. And this is a picture, dear friends, of delegates and friends assembled at the geometrical center of the temple grounds, and they were invoking the greatest name as their faces are turned towards Akka. The visit of His Holiness Abdul Baha to the United States and Canada for 8 months in 1912 had a significant impact on the Baha'i community, resulting in proclamation and growth of the Baha'i community. And this, dear friends, is an article in the newspaper. It says, 40 years in jail brings wisdom. Abdul Baha urges world peace. In 1921, on assuming the guardianship, the beloved guardian Shohreh Effendi wrote to the American Baha'i community that every locality should elect a local spiritual assembly, and the Baha'i Temple Unity should evolve into a national spiritual assembly. The American Baha'i community diligently followed the guidelines given by Shohreh Effendi. The evolution of the Baha'i Temple unity to the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada was completed by 1925. There were 45 spiritual assemblies in the United States by April 1928 and steadily increasing to 64 by 1936. And here, dear friends, are the members of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada in the period 1925 to 1926. You can see Montfort Mills was the chairman, Roy Wilhelm, the vice chairman, Horace Hawley, the secretary, Florence Morton, the treasurer, Amelia Collins, Ali Kuli Khan, Siegfried Schopflofer, Alan McDaniel, and Carl Scheffler. In paragraph 17, dear friends, the beloved guardian, Shoghi Effendi, refers to the Baha'i House of Worship in Wilmette, Chicago, by asking, what other community has proved itself be fired by so noble a vision, or willing to rise to such heights of self-sacrifice, or ready to achieve so great a measure of solidarity as to be able to raise in so short a time and in the course of such crucial years an edifice that can well deserve to be regarded as the greatest contribution ever made by the West to the cause of Baha'u'llah. And here, dear friends, are 4 sides of the gallery section were completed by October 1st, 1938. And this is one of the goals, to complete the exterior of the superstructure in the first 7-year plan. So you can see as they're working on the completion of the exterior of the superstructure as a part of the first 7-year plan, you can see this picture here. In 1902, the governing board of Baha'is of Chicago, known as House of Spirituality, asked Abdul Baha for permission to build a house of worship in Chicago. His Holiness Abdul Baha responded by granting permission for the construction of the Baha'i House of Worship in a tablet dated 7th June 1903. And here is the tablet, dear friends. His Holiness Abdul Baha writes, O ye who are attracted, O ye who are firm, O ye who are zealous in the service of the cause of God and are sacrificers of possessions and lives for the promotion of the word of God. I perused your recent letter, and my heart was filled with joy through its beautifying meanings and its eloquent contents. Truly they were suggested by the breaths of confirmation from the glorious Lord. O friends of Abdul Baha and his co-sharers and partners in the servitude of the Lord of hosts, verily the greatest affair and the most important matter today is to establish a mashlaskar and to found a temple from which the voice of praisings may rise to the kingdom of the majestic Lord. Blessings be upon you for having thought to do so and intending to erect such an edifice, advancing all in devoting your wealth in this great purpose and in this splendid work. You will soon see the angels of confirmation following after you, and the hosts of reinforcement crowding before you. When the Mashalaskar is accomplished, when the lights are emanating therefrom, the righteous ones are presenting themselves therein, The prayers are performed with supplication towards the mysterious kingdom of heaven. The voice of glorification is raised to the Lord, the Supreme. Then the believers shall rejoice. The hearts shall be dilated and overflow with the love of the all-living and self-existent. The people shall hasten to worship in that heavenly temple. The fragrances of God will be elevated. The divine teachings will be established in the hearts, like the establishment of the Spirit in mankind. The people will then stand firm in the cause of your Lord, the merciful. Praise and greetings be upon you. Dear friends, we see the reference, His Holiness Abdul Baha, in Tablets of Abdul Baha Abbas, Volume 1, page 16. His Holiness Abdul Baha provided constant guidance on the design and architectural form of the temple through various tablets that he wrote to the American Baha'i community, as well as counsels he gave to the American pilgrims who visited him in the Holy Land. In 1907, His Holiness Abdul Baha highlighted the significance and importance of building the Mashal Asghar in Chicago, and described how it would contribute to the unity and prosperity of the cause. These messages resulted in a new surge of activity and increased contributions by assemblies and individuals. The House of Spirituality of Chicago invited representatives from various cities to attend a meeting on the 27th of November, 1907, to consult on the project. A committee of 9 people was appointed by the convention to coordinate and oversee the work of the temple. On the 9th of April, 1908, the first 2 building lots for the temple were purchased. On the 19th of June, His Holiness Abdul Baha lovingly directed the Baha'is in Chicago to hold another national convention for the temple with 1 representative selected from each community around the country. This convention was held on the 22nd and 23rd of March 1909 in Chicago, and the proceedings opened with the reading of a tablet received from Abdul Baha. The convention created a Baha'i Temple Unity Committee to undertake the work of the construction of the temple and other Baha'i activities of national importance until the formation of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada. On the May 1st, 1912, His Holiness Abdul Baha visited the temple site and personally laid the cornerstone of the building. The purchase of temple land was completed in 1914 with contributions received from both within the United States and abroad. The architectural design of the temple, developed by Louis J. Bourgeois, was presented to the convention held in New York in 1920 as a large plaster model. The construction of caisson foundations began 17th December 1920 with a contract given to Mr. Avery Brundage. And here's a beautiful picture of 21st March 1909, and this is First Baha'i Temple Unity Convention in Chicago. On Tuesday, April 27th, in the afternoon session of the convention, the design for the Mashal Asghar at Wilmette, Illinois, was finally chosen by the 49 delegates present. Designs were submitted by 3 architects, Louis Bourgeois, William Sutherland Maxwell, and Charles Mason Reaney. and Louis Bourgeois' design was chosen by a majority vote of the delegates. Upon Remy's proposal, the decision to adopt Bourgeois' plan was made unanimous. The work of boring the ground for the foundation of the building was started on September 24, 1920. And we find this reference, dear friends, in Hassan Baliouzi's immortal work, Abdul Baha, the Center of the Covenant of Baha'u'llah, page 443. And here's a picture of Louis Bourgeois, the architect of the Mother Temple of the West. So this, dear friends, is his original plaster model of the temple developed by Louis J. Bourgeois. And here it is again. And this was presented. The 12th annual Baha'i Convention was made memorable by the choice of a design for a great mashal-askar, or place of worship, which will be erected in Chicago. The model selected was constructed by Louis Bourgeois of New York. It is a building of 9 sides topped with a transparent dome. And This Week in History, as reported by the Summit County Journal of the Week of May 29, 1920. The Executive Board of the Baha'i Temple Unity Committee decided to seek the guidance of His Holiness Abdul Baha on the design. Mr. Bourgeois prepared some drawings of the design, and in the middle of January 1921, sailed to the Holy Land to personally share the design with His Holiness Abdul Baha. And here is his drawings. You can see Mr. Louis J. Bourgeois' drawing of the House of Worship. Here's another drawing. This is one of the side entrances. So after seeing the design, His Holiness Abdul Baha indicated to Corinne True in a tablet that the design was too large and costly. Accordingly, Mr. Bourgeois modified the plan and the construction of the temple commenced. In 1925, the beloved guardian Shogh Effendi advised the American Baha'i community not to start the next stage of the project until they had accumulated $400,000. The superstructure of the temple was completed and handed over at the opening of the convention in 1931. Shogh Effendi set the completion of the exterior of the temple as one of the goals of the North American Baha'i community's first 7-year plan that started in 1937. Here's a picture, dear friends. Baha'i temple consists of a steel superstructure on which ornate precast concrete panels are hung. So this is the steel superstructure. And here, dear friends, is an incredible picture. This is the first picture taken at the Chicago Temple steps after the completion of the superstructure, May 1st, 1931. And here is a picture of the Baha'i booth in Communications Building of the 1939 New York World's Fair. And you can see the Baha'i temple model is shown in detail. So here, dear friends, is the revised drawing of the House of Worship. So by Mr. Louis J. Bourgeois. The mashal-askar, the first Baha'i House of Worship in America, when completed. Its foundation is already laid at Wilmette, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. Mr. Louis Bourgeois, architect. This was his revised drawing. And this was his revised model. So this was his revised plaster model that he presented. And here, dear friends, is Amatul Baha Re Khanum with the model of the Chicago Baha'i Temple. And this is the model on exhibit at the Illinois State Fair, 1939. So, dear friends, let us continue securing the allegiance of royalty. One of the questions asked by the beloved guardian in paragraph 17 is, what other community can justifiably lay claim to have succeeded through the unsupported efforts of one of its humble members in securing the spontaneous allegiance of royalty to its cause, and in winning such marvelous and written testimonies to its truth? The royalty refers to Queen Marie of Romania, and one of its humble members is a reference to Martha Root, the first American Baha'i who arose to teach the faith after meeting His Holiness Abdul Baha in 1911 and 1912. Martha Root left the United States in January 1915 on her first travel teaching trip to Europe. She responded to the call of His Holiness Abdul Baha in the tablets of the Divine Plan in the same year they were unveiled in the United States, 1919, and embarked in the first of her world journeys, which were to span a total period of 20 years. In the top picture, we see Martha Root, and at the bottom, Queen Marie of Romania. And in later sections, dear friends, we will go into much greater detail on these great souls. Queen Marie was born in Kent, England. Her mother was the only surviving daughter of Tsar Alexander II of Russia, who had received a special tablet from His Holiness Baha'u'llah. Queen Marie married Crown Prince Ferdinand I of Romania in 1893 and reigned with him from 1914 to 1927, and then as Queen Dowager from 1927 to 1938. Here's a picture of Queen Marie of Romania. Queen Marie sent open letters to Canadian and American newspapers and publicly proclaimed her support for the faith. Her letter in the Toronto Star, May 4th, 1926 reads, "It is a wondrous message that Baha'u'llah and his son Abdul Baha have given us. Love, the mainspring of every energy, tolerance towards each other, desire of understanding each other, knowing each other, helping each other, forgiving each other. It is Christ's message taken up anew, in the same words almost, but adapted to the 1,000 years and more difference that lies between the year 1 and today. If ever the name of Baha'u'llah or Abdul Baha comes to your attention, do not put their writings from you. Search out their books and let their glorious, peace-bringing, love-creating words and lessons sink into your hearts as they have into mine. Seek them and be the happier." And this is a picture of Queen Marie of Romania, and we find the reference to that letter in the Baha'i World, Volume 2, page 174. King Ferdinand died on the 20th of July, 1927, and Martha Root had her second audience with the Queen on October 9th, 1927. She was told that the Queen and her daughter, Princess Ileana, had been reading the Kitab-i-Iran, learning about life after death. And here, dear friends, we see Queen Queen Marie of Romania and Princess Ileana. Queen Marie and her daughter Ileana planned to visit the Baha'i holy places as part of a trip to the Near East. In anticipation of receiving the guests, the house of His Holiness Abdul Baha was prepared. In March 1930, Shoghi Effendi sent a formal invitation to the Queen to visit the world center of the faith. As there was no response to the invitation, the beloved guardian sent another cable on the 26th of March to her hotel in Cairo. 2 days later came their response from the Romanian minister in Cairo. Her Majesty regrets that not passing through Palestine, she will not be able to visit you. This was a source of disappointment to the Queen and the Holy Family. And here, dear friends, is a picture of Queen Marie. You can see her seated in the center, together with, from left to right in the photo, George Reisner, Mrs. Mary Reisner, Hans Martin Hendrik, and Queen Marie's youngest daughter, Princess Ileana, in the white dress, and Miss Mary Reisner. Establishment of Baha'i schools. Another major achievement of the North American Baha'i community at the time, as mentioned by the beloved guardian in paragraph 17, was the development of Baha'i schools throughout the continent. He raises this point by asking, what other community has shown the foresight, the organizing ability, the enthusiastic eagerness that have been responsible for the establishment and multiplication throughout its territory of those initial schools? 3 Baha'i schools were established in the United States by 1938: Greenacre Baha'i School, Bosch Baha'i School, and Llewellyn Baha'i School. And here, dear friends, is a picture of Greenacre Baha'i School. Greenacre Baha'i School, referred to as the most important institution of its kind in the world by the beloved guardian. Greenacre occupies a unique place in history. It was built in 1890. Greenacre originally served as the Elliott Hotel. Sarah Farmer conceived Greenacre as a gathering place where minds, souls, and bodies would be refreshed. After meeting with participants in the Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893, she pursued the opportunity for Greenacre to become a universal platform for the comparative study of religions, and in 1894 opened Greenacre with the raising of the world's first known peace flag. Sarah had chosen the theme of peace for Greenacre because she believed it represented a call to all humanity, as well as the message brought by each prophet. You can see the picture of Sarah Farmer there. In 1899, Sarah Farmer had the privilege of being in the presence of His Holiness Abdul Baha in the Holy Land, and found complete fulfillment of her ideas of social reform in the Baha'i teachings. She returned to America with a vision that Greenacre would become a center for truth, peace, and justice. From 1900 to 1909, Greenacre provided a focal center for the development of the early Baha'i community, and with Sarah's initiative became the first Baha'i summer school. His Holiness Abdul Baha visited in 1912, conferring upon Greenacre another unique distinction as the only school imbued with the spirit of his presence. Here's a picture, dear friends, of His Holiness Abdul Baha with Sarah Farmer. in 1912. The beloved guardian praises the audacity, consecration, tenacity, self-renunciation, and unstinted devotion of the North American pioneers who scattered to all parts of the world to establish the faith. One of these shining lights was an early American pioneer, Agnes Alexander. At the request of Baha'u'llah's eldest son, His Holiness Abdul Baha, Miss Alexander pioneered the Baha'i faith in Japan in 1914. In 1921, she became the first to introduce the new gospel in Korea. Except for extended vacations in Hawaii, Agnes spent over 23 years in Japan. In 1957, the beloved guardian Shoaib Effendi appointed Agnes Alexander a hand of the cause of God. And here's a picture of her, Agnes Alexander. In the United States in 1919, Miss Martha Root was the first one to arise to the call of His Holiness Abdul Baha and embarked on her world travel teaching tours. In the words of the beloved guardian Shoaib Effendi, Martha Root was the archetype of Baha'i itinerant teachers and the foremost hand raised by His Holiness Baha'u'llah since Abdul Baha's passing, leading ambassadress of his faith and pride of Baha'i teachers, whether man or woman, in both the East and the West. And dear friends, we find this reference of the beloved guardian in God Passes By, page 386. Also, dear friends, in 1918, when His Abdul Baha's tablets calling upon the American Baha'is to hasten to all parts of the world to spread the teachings, came Clara and John Henry Hyde Dunn, spontaneously arose to serve, immediately deciding to respond by going to Australia, where they felt they could best serve. Shoaib Effendi had great affection for Hyde Dunn, to whom he referred in God Passes By, his history of the first century of the Baha'i faith, as great-hearted and heroic. The beloved guardian Shoaib Effendi eulogized beloved Father Dunn as Australia's spiritual conqueror and observed in a cablegram that magnificent career, veteran warrior, faith Baha'u'llah reflects purest luster, world historic mission conferred American community by Abdul Baha. In 1952, Shoaib Effendi posthumously designated Hyde Dunn a hand of the cause of God. On 29 February 1952, Clara Dunn was among a contingent of 7 individuals appointed by Shoaib Effendi as hands of the cause of God. And I believe it is in part 21, we'll go into much greater detail on the life of the Dunns. International pioneering became more systematic in 1936, when the beloved guardian sent a cable to the National Convention of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada, and summoned them for a systematic action in realizing Abdul Baha's vision as revealed in the tablets of the Divine Plan. The beloved guardian took critical steps regarding the ownership of all Baha'i properties. Hand of the Cause of God, Yugo Gyacheri, writes, he, Shoaib Effendi, mentioned that after the reading of the will and testament of Abdul Baha, when he found himself appointed guardian of the cause of God. He told the assembled members of the whole family that he renounced then and there the ownership of any estate, possessions, and chattels that would be his rightful inheritance. The beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi also arranged for all assets to be held in trust in the names of the donors of those assets, and later registered the name of Incorporated National Assemblies. In paragraph 17, the beloved guardian mentions the decisive share of the American Baha'i community in the acquisition in the immediate surroundings of the holy shrines and preliminary purchase of land for future international institutions at the Baha'i World Center. For example, Amelia Collins, one of the hands of the cause, donated the entire sum required to purchase the land on Mount Carmel, overlooking the cave of Elijah, for the future Mashal Askar of the Holy Land. Shoghi Effendi transferred the ownership of these properties to the Palestine branch of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States as a legal entity registered in Palestine. And we will also talk about Amelia Collins in, I believe, part 21. By the time of his passing, Shoghi Effendi had effected similar negotiations to register ownership of properties on Mount Carmel to the Israel branches of a total of 9 Baha'i assemblies around the world in recognition of their donations. Not only did this emphasize the international character of the faith, but it was also part of his policy of owning nothing himself. This touches on the question why the beloved guardian left no will and testament. On the one hand, he had no possessions to bequeath, and while, on the other, he had no son to whom he could pass the office of the guardianship, and all the male descendants of His Holiness Baha'u'llah had broken the covenant. Translation and publication of sacred writings. By 1938, Baha'u'llah and the New Era was translated into 40 different languages and published in 33 languages. The Kitab-i-Iran was published in 15 languages and translation to 8 other languages was underway. The Hidden Words of Baha'u'llah was published in 15 languages and translation into another 4 languages. Some Answered Questions of His Holiness Abdul Baha was published in 6 languages and translation to 10 languages was underway. Incorporation. One of the objectives pursued by the beloved guardian during his ministry was to ensure that entities of Baha'i administrative order were legalized and legally recognized in each country at both the national and the local levels, and that any assets were held by an endowment fund. The 1926-1927 National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada completed a task which, while pertaining to the outer and more material aspects of the cause, nevertheless, has a special significance for its spirit and inward sacred purpose. This task consisted in creating a legal form which gives proper substance and substantial character to the administrative processes embodied in the Baha'i teachings. The form adopted was known as a voluntary trust, a species of corporation recognized under the common law and possessing a long and interesting history. And here, dear friends, we see a copy. This is a certificate of declaration of trust of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada. And this is what the beloved guardian was requesting, and the National Spiritual Assembly of Baha'is of the United States and Canada, 1926-1927, immediately arose to undertake this task. In the United States of America, the national endowments of the faith already representing $1.75 million of assets, and established through a series of indentures of trust created in 1928, 1929, 1935, 1938, 1939, 1941, and 42 by the National Spiritual Assembly in that country, acting as trustees of the American Baha'i community, now include, so these are all the endowments, the land and structure of the Mashul Askar, the caretaker's cottage in Wilmette, Illinois, the adjoining Hazrat al-Quds, the Baha'i National Headquarters and its supplementary administrative office, the inn, the fellowship house, the Baha'i hall, the arts and crafts studio, a farm, a number of cottages, several parcels of land, including the holding on Mount Salvat, blessed by the footsteps of Abdul Baha in Greenacre, in the state of Maine, Bosch House, the Baha'i Hall, a fruit orchard, the Redwood Grove, a dormitory and ranch buildings in Geyserville, California, Wilhelm House, Evergreen Cabin, a pine grove, and 7 lots with buildings at West Englewood, New Jersey, the scene of the memorable Unity Feast given by Abdul Baha in June 1912 to the Baha'is of the New York Metropolitan District, Wilson House, blessed by his presence and land in Malden, Massachusetts, Matthews House and ranch buildings in Pine Valley, Colorado, land in Muskegon, Michigan, and a cemetery lot in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And we see these references in God Passes By, page 337, and I've put bullets for added emphasis. Finally, dear friends, in paragraph 17, the beloved guardian praises the North American Baha'i community for their efforts in safeguarding the Baha'i faith and its institutions in countries where the community had been experiencing persecution. Shoghi Effendi mentions Persia, Egypt, Iraq, Russia, and Germany as some examples. In God Passes By, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi identifies some specific authorities who were approached by the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada. The Palestine High Commissioner for the restitution of the keys of the tomb of Baha'u'llah to its custodian. The Shah of Persia on 4 occasions pleading for justice on behalf of their persecuted brethren within his domains. The Persian Prime Minister on that same subject, the heads of Islam in Persia appealing for harmony and peace among religions. King Faisal of Iraq for the purpose of ensuring the security of the most great house in Baghdad. The Soviet authorities on behalf of the Baha'i communities in Russia, the German authorities regarding the disabilities suffered by their German brethren, the Egyptian government concerning the emancipation of their co-religionists from the yoke of Islamic orthodoxy, Persian cabinet in connection with the closing of Persian Baha'i educational institutions, the State Department of the United States government, and the Turkish ambassador in Washington and the Turkish cabinet in Ankara in defense of the interests of the faith in Turkey. And this concludes part 7, dear friends. Excellent. Thank you very much, dear friends. We look forward to presenting part 8. Thank you.